when I was speaking with some disrespect about research early on, I shouldn't have said it in front of David Craddock, who wields all the research that's available on employee ownership as if it were a kind of five-class with hat. There is a role of research. And I think we're grateful to David, among other things, make sure the research information we have on our site contains writers for the best. So there is, as with all research, flaws in it, and there's a lot to be said for conviction on science. David, I think, is one of the speakers who's convinced more people about it than anybody else I know. He has a personal passion for it, as well as the author on the subject. I hope you'll excuse me for a moment, I have to dash out. I'm in the process of selling an enterprise myself, and need to make one or two good calls, but I'll be back in a moment. David.
Thank you, Malcolm. So I guess in Malcolm's absence, I need to watch my own time. Yes? So I'll put my watch there so that I follow the plan. So, right. Thank you indeed very much for the opportunity to address this gathering today. My business is Craddock Consultancy Services, which I established in 1997. So we've been in business for 20 years, providing solutions to businesses in relation to all aspects of employee share ownership. Prior to that, I've been involved in the subject from 1982. So we present our business as specialists in employee share ownership and reward management. We combine employee share scheme activity, implementation, administration thereof, with share valuation and alterations to share capital as necessary. And we seek to provide a service which provides business solutions. And I hope as I actually take you through these case studies that you'll see that EMI is not some clinical set of tax reliefs. It is actually a very proactive commercial subject which enables us to provide very inventive solutions to a whole range of business challenges. Let's just go on to this next slide, which introduces you to the concept of a case study. As my old maths teacher, Mr. Hobson, used to say, everything becomes clear through the examples. So what I'm seeking to do through this presentation is to present you with a range of examples in the form of case studies. You might be able to say, yes, David, case study number 1 is us. Yes, David, case number 4 is us. But David, a combination of case study number 3 and case study number 5 is us. Whatever you take from it, we'll be pleased to assist you in the implementation of your employee share scheme arrangements. Now, there's one basic principle that I want to start with, which goes right to the very heart of employee share ownership. And it provides us with a sense, a very profound sense, of what employee share ownership is about. And it's this. The employee will be much more inclined to produce value for the business, to grow the value of the share capital, if the employee has a stake in that share capital that they're seeking to enhance on value. Yes? So as shareholders, as owner-managers of your business, you want to grow the share value of your business. The employee needs to have an interest in the share capital to share with you in that objective, to identify the employee with the business. I remember many years back now, actually, I went over to Ireland to introduce an employee share scheme arrangement. And this was a company that had been ailing, and it was a quoted company. Most of our clients these days are small to medium-sized companies, but that particular company was a quoted company. And I was invited to this extraordinary general meeting to get up and explain what this employee share scheme initiative was about. And one of the so-called long-suffering shareholders stood up at the back of the room and said, but Mr. Craddock, what about the long-suffering shareholders? Why don't they have their share scheme? Well, with respect to him, and indeed I did show respect to him, he was a long-suffering shareholder. The shareholders have their shares. That is their share scheme. Yes? The employees have their employee share scheme, and so they are aligned with the interest of the shareholders. Okay? So those principles lie right at the very heart of employee share ownership. And as Malcolm indicated a few minutes back, I've done very, very substantial research in both the UK and the US on the effectiveness of employee share scheme arrangements. And indeed, I combine a lot of it, not just on the ESOP Centre website, but in my book, Toddy's Guide to Employee Share Schemes. So, what about the case studies? The case studies are seeking to illustrate this principle that you want to grow your business, yes? I guess those of you who are owner managers are here because you want to grow your business and you believe that employee ownership can assist you in growing your business. Am I correct? Yes, hopefully. I've got a few nods. Thank you very much for that. So let's say, in very, very simple terms, your business is worth £100,000 and there's only you in it. Okay? I'm using these parameters simply for purposes of the illustration. You want your business to be worth 10 million, maybe even 100 million. Okay? How are you going to get there? You need to involve other people. And you want to motivate them. And that's why you need to align them with your interest. Remember, the shareholders have their shares, the employees have their share schemes, through which they identify with the interests of the shareholders. Okay, an overview of the statutory requirements. The list provided a very full exposition, but these are just a few key and salient points. The first thing I want to emphasise here is that EMI is a very highly tax-efficient scheme. Yes, it's laden with tax reliefs. It's also a very highly commercial scheme, and that we can actually bring employees into employee share ownership at a very, very low option price indeed, sometimes as little as a very, very low nominal value, maybe a hundredth, maybe a thousandth of a penny. It's very, very flexible indeed. Over the years we've introduced employee share scheme arrangements through EMI in something like 35, 36 different ways. It is very, very flexible indeed. As a consequence, it gives itself to providing a multifarious array of business solutions to your business challenges. It's been around since Finance Act 2000. Liz indicated that it's now inspiring governments and practitioners in Australia, Ireland, Sweden, and other countries as well. But it was inspired by a long-standing scheme in the US, which had been very, very successful for a number of decades. And that scheme does indeed continue to this day within the United States of America. Absolutely key to compliance is that the company must be a qualifying company. This means that the company must be independent throughout the life of the options, yes? And there must not be any potential for that independence to be compromised at the point at which the options are granted. Secondly, the gross assets of the company must not exceed 30 million at the date of grant. That's solely at the date of grant. So that's no restriction on the company growing beyond 30 million, but at the date of grant it must not be worth more than £30 million. And it must not have within its trading profile certain trades which constitute 20% or more of its trade, and that position must prevail throughout the life of the option arrangement. So there's the independence test, must hold throughout the life of the option, yes. There's the gross assets test, which need only apply at the date of grant, and there's the trading activities requirement, which must hold right throughout the life of the option. On the employee side, because remember this is a contractual arrangement between company and employee, we talked about the qualifying company criteria. What about the eligible employee criteria? Well, the individual to whom the option is granted must be an employee throughout the life of the option. In addition to that, they must give committed time to the company. And there are two avenues into achieving the compliance with the committed time requirements. The first is that they must work at least 24 hours a week, on average, yes? Or alternatively, 75% of their working time. Well, working time takes into account employment with the employee company, or the subsidiary of the employee company, and indeed also other employments, or indeed other self-employments. Yes? So we need to take all that into account, and as Liz rightly said, HMRC are becoming increasingly stringent on confirming that an employee does actually comply with this criteria. And then the final point, that at the date of grant, the individual must not have a material interest of more than 30% in the company. The maximum initial market value for an employee on unexercised EMI options at any point in time is £250,000 worth at unrestricted market value. And then the total canopy position for the company as a whole, including everybody who's got unexercised EMI options at any point in time, is £3 million, again calculated by reference to unrestricted market value. And the company must have fewer than 250 employees at any point of grant for options indeed to be granted under EMI. Okay, I'm going to take you through these 5 case studies. The first is geared to showing the implications for a company which is motivating its employees towards sale. It's working toward that day when the calf has been suitably fattened and they can go to market and sell for a nice bountiful price. The second is a long-term incentive plan, and what I'm seeking to demonstrate here is how EMI can be used very, very effectively indeed to introduce serious tax efficiencies into a long-term incentive plan. The third study is about an employee-controlled company where the intention of the owner-managers is for this company to continue as employee-controlled into perpetuity. No intention whatsoever, at this stage anyway, for the company to sell to an independent third-party acquirer. Fourth is succession, how employee share ownership can be used to provide for succession, and indeed a diversification of the owner-manager's investment portfolio, where owner-manager or group of owner-managers may have developed their business and the whole of their wealth is actually contained within their company, and they make a resolve to actually diversify away from that, realise cash from the business and invest in other types of investments as well. And then case study 5, the growth shares model, which Stephen and Liz have both alluded to. This is the model which creates a low value share, but which has the capacity to attract all future value. Okay? So a range of case studies here, each of which I will identify in terms of the facts of the case, then identify the solution which we establish for the client, and then on top of that, identify some key features which we learn from these case studies, which are applicable in a variety of different circumstances. The moral of the story, if you've not got it already, is if you can possibly fit your scheme into EMI, do EMI. Because it's laden with these tax reliefs, it's seriously flexible, and it provides the opportunity to provide different business solutions. So let's go into case study number 1. This is a company that I met some 10 years ago in the equivalent conference that we're holding today. We held that particular conference that day at the Institute of Directors, and during the first interval, an individual came to me and said, "Thank you very much, David, for that presentation. Can you act for me?" And so I contracted with them and we introduced this scheme arrangement. At the time, I valued this company, a private company, at £300,000. It was established some 8 to 9 months earlier. The intention was that in 5 years' time, this company would be worth somewhere between 7 and 10 million. So this was a company which was very, very ambitious. Yeah, very, very ambitious. And as is the case with a lot of companies where the owner managers are ambitious, they wanted the objectives of the company to be seriously focused on moving toward that exit where 7 to 10 million could be realised. And in order to focus that company, they chose to introduce employee share ownership with a view to focusing each and every individual employee. Remember, another key principle about employee share ownership is to incentivise and involve the employee. It's to actually give the individual employee within the business the opportunity to develop that entrepreneurial mindset in contribution to the development of the business. Well, this particular company was in a fast growth sector, all geared to marketing software technologies to very, very high quality premium clients, and it's still in that business. It's still not sold out, and it's still developing its value. The intention at the time was corporate exit within 5 years. Corporate exit within 5 years didn't happen. We're still 10 years on, but remember, no one actually foresaw the recession, and they got hit somewhat by the recession, but they're resilient. And they bounced back, and they're looking to sell probably in another 2 to 3 years' time, some 12 to 13 years after the origin of the company. Now, in order to achieve their objectives, they need to recruit and retain high-caliber engineers. This particular type of engineer is difficult to recruit in the marketplace and even more difficult to retain because other businesses are competing for their services. So the incentive had to be strong. And so we introduced, by way of a solution, the following. The first point, of course, was to recognise that the focus must be solely on the concept of actually realising that value after a finite period of time. The opportunity for key employees to actually share in the capital sale. So everything about this scheme was geared to that objective. Everything was geared to maximising the value at the date of exit. Yeah? There were no interim points of value realisation. There were no opportunities for interim dividends if they exercised early. Everything was geared toward realising that value at the date of exit. We sought to make the offer as attractive as possible, and so we introduced an option price which was set at nominal value in order to maximise the benefit to the employees. We introduced a lower level of share options for support staff. This was recognising that these key high calibre engineers, they needed support from within the business. And so the lower level engineers and indeed also the administrative staff, everybody was given an opportunity to participate in the employee share ownership concept. The recognition of team performance lying right at the heart of the employee share ownership initiative. There's something really wonderful about employee share ownership, that it gives an individual incentive, it gives an opportunity for an individual to realise wealth, but it's also a team subject as well, in welding everyone together around developing that value, recognising that the development of that value is the totem around which everybody involved in the business unites. So, exercisable events restricted to exit positions. That's the focus, to fatten the calf. What might those exit positions be? Takeover trade sale, typically. Usually, in fact, for a company with this profile, the sale of the company, the issued share capital of the company to an independent third-party acquiring company. Maybe a management buyout. And indeed, we have a couple of individuals within this business who are potential for leading a management buyout arrangement. Remember, this is 10 years ago that I introduced this scheme. EMI has a life of 10 years. So indeed, only over the course of this last 4 to 5 weeks, we've actually been involved in exercising the options for this company. So the individuals take ownership of the shares. Potentially a flotation on a recognised stock exchange, very unlikely for this company. It's not really got the resource or indeed the requirement in order to do that. The likelihood is that it will be, in 2 or 3 years' time, a sale to an independent third-party acquiring company. That might be the issued share capital that is sold, most probably will be, could be the sale of the trade and assets. Either way, the expectation is the company will be sold to a third party at some point in the next 2 to 3 years. Remember what I said, everything is geared to the exit date. That's the focus. Keep the minds of the employees focused on that eventual exit date. And therefore, if an individual leaves the company for whatever reason, the options will lapse. A feature which concentrates the attention on the focus of selling out within the finite period of time. A couple of interesting features I want to bring to your attention from this case study number 1. Rather than have staggered grant of options, which are linked to increasing values of the company, we chose to actually introduce for each individual a one-off grant, yes, with an accumulating right to exercise as they continue with due performance over the period of a 5-year set arrangement. And also the feature establishes an option price when the market price is low. So to have a one-off grant linked to a low option price is massively advantageous to the employees and provides that additional spur that they can attract value over and above that very low option price. Okay, let's have a look at case study number 2. This is a quoted company. This company is quoted on AIM. At the time, it was valued at some £18 million, and it was a company that was a company with a very high level reputation in the business of passenger and freight rail transport. And already introduced, going back some years now, a tax-approved profit-sharing employee share scheme, and then subsequently the successor to that scheme, the share incentive plan, had already introduced a share save scheme. All these schemes were all employee schemes. What we required to introduce into this company was a retention mechanism for the senior executive team, for the directors and the senior executive team. This company had been very, very successful even without that executive incentive. But the need for retention was because it had come to the attention of the other transport providers that this team was very successful, and therefore there was a concern that employees might be lost, and indeed senior employees might be lost to their competitors. So we needed to introduce a very seriously incentivising retention mechanism. And so this is the solution. We established an EMI arrangement through which we granted nil cost options. Yes? Now, the intention here was not to satisfy the exercise of the options through the issue of new issue shares, okay? Where, in fact, we couldn't have nil cost options if we were working with new issue shares. Instead, we were recycling existing shares, and therefore we were able to introduce a 100% discount on the market value at the date of grant for purposes of setting the option price. Monies were settled into an employee share trust in order to enable the trustees to purchase shares off the AIM market. Okay? Those shares would ultimately be dispensed out of the trust in order to actually satisfy the exercise of options. Now this is your classic Louis Kelso solution that Malcolm alluded to right at the outset of our deliberations today. The arrangement is this. Money is transferred by the company into the trust. Trustees use that money to buy shares from existing shareholders. If it's a quoted company, off the market. If it's a private company, from the private shareholders. And then at some point, those shares are dispensed out of the trust to the employees in order to satisfy exercise of options. And then when the employees leave, they sell the shares back to the trust, and so in perpetuity, the shares get recycled in and out of the trust. In perpetuity. So this particular arrangement, we introduced some very strenuous performance conditions linked to total shareholder return that must be achieved for the exercise of options in 3 years' time. And we chose to introduce options on a staggered basis. Yes? Options granted on an annual basis so that options overlap. This means that when we come to the end of 3 years, and individuals exercise their options and have the opportunity potentially to sell their shares, they're not going to leave because they have a vested interest in other options that have been granted at the end of year 1, at the end of year 2, at the end of year 3. You see what I mean? It's overlapping options. Yes, I've got a whole chapter in my book which compares the accumulating right to exercise, which I referred to in case study 1, with the staggered grant of options, which I'm referring to within this particular case study. Salient features in relation to this scheme: the combination of a 100% discount EMI option combined with an employee share trust replicates an LTIP arrangement where the challenge historically has always been to minimise the tax charge. Well, what this means, of course, very definitely we have an absolute guarantee of no tax or NICs at the inception of the scheme, yes, and any increase in value from the market value at the date of grant through to the market value at date of exercise is immune completely from both income tax and national insurance contributions. Instead, it falls within the capital gains tax regime, which, provided conditions are met, and we're going to go on to that in a few moments, is 10% only. And then the staggered option arrangement, it assists retention. Yes? Individuals get a benefit from exercise of one, but they've still got other options that they want to realise. They're not going to walk away from options which are already pregnant with gain, albeit at this stage on an unrealised basis. Let's go on to case study number 3. This is an employee-controlled company. The intention is for that employee control to go on in perpetuity. The intention being never to sell the company. Never say never, as they say, but that's the intention of this company, the company directors, the owner-managers, at the point at which the scheme is established. So, private company, I value the company with a whole company value of some £5 million. No plan to sell in the short term, the medium term, or the long term. A very fast growth company, yet again, in the business of software, but this time software testing, different elements of software activity from the example in case study number 1. The business of software testing, and with a recognition that the opportunities abound, not just in the UK, but also in the US and Europe, and indeed throughout the whole of the developed world. Within this company, it was very clear to me when I first met with the owner managers that there was a very strong belief in the employee share ownership ethic. A belief that employee share ownership can grow the business, can develop the business. Those of you who want to see the evidence, it is very, very strong indeed. There is something about responsibly involving employees in an employee share ownership arrangement and the effect that it has on the mind, on the human psyche. Combined with a proper communication strategy, which we always encourage employees to engage in, and we indeed assist them in that communication strategy, the effect is to align the interests of the employee with the company. Employees become more interested in the company. They want to understand how the company is developing. They want to get a grasp of what is the financial development of the business. And one of the challenges for the owner managers is how much information do you give to them? Yes? And that, again, needs to be done responsibly, and we advise also on that aspect. So the intention through this arrangement of continuing employee share ownership into perpetuity is to recycle the shares. To recycle the shares. Remember the principle that I identified in the last study, the Louis Kelso principle that Malcolm alluded to. Yes, it was indeed in relation to a company called Peninsula Newspapers that again I write about in my book, based in Palo Alto in 1956. Money goes to trust. Money goes to trust by way typically of either contribution or loan. Somehow money gets into trust. Yes, trust buys the shares. Yeah. And then those shares get dispensed out to employees over a period of time at the point at which options are exercised. That is the key Louis Kelso principle, which was so successful in Peninsula Newspapers, where shares were recycled generation after generation after generation, and it's a principle which we operate with many of our clients. It's not the only principle, as you can see from our case studies, but it is a very tried and tested, successful strategy. In this particular business, we set the option price, not at nominal value, but this time equal to market value of the shares at the date of grant. That was purposeful. That was purposeful. The owner managers wanted the employees to see that these were shares that had value and they must pay value for their shares. And the intention was that the employees would actually buy their shares primarily through bonus monies, or at least have the opportunity to buy their shares through bonus monies. The solution. Okay, exercises were made on an all-employee basis. Employees were offered the shares on the basis of a tiered structure, prepared on the basis of objective and fair criteria linked to levels of seniority in the business. We introduced a feature. Now, what I'm seeking to illustrate here actually is how we can introduce particular features in order to bespoke the arrangement to meet your particular needs. Yes? A couple of examples here. In order to encourage early share purchase, we restricted the opportunity for exercise to a period of 3 years from the date of grant. That was a particular feature which we chose to introduce in order to encourage a particular behaviour, an early purchase. Yes? Similarly, in order to encourage some retention by not allowing the sale of the shares until 2 years after purchase. So again, a feature which we introduced in order to encourage particular behaviour, namely retention. The exercises are satisfied through the employee share trust, purchasing shares, not this time from a recognised stock exchange, as was in the case of case study 2, but from the existing independent private shareholders, and then in time, dispensing those shares out to the employees on exercise. Let me identify a point here. Yeah, we're going well on time. I'm watching the time, Mark. Even in your absence, I was watching the time.
I'm just looking at the corner of my eye. I know you're very good, David.
Yes, okay. So, always, whether it's at a conference or in the first consultation or the second consultation with the client, at some point, the client says to me, look, David, it's all right for those quoted companies. Yeah? They've got the recognised stock exchange which sets the price. They've got the recognised stock exchange which sets the market, establishes the market, provides for a market for the shares. But what about our private company? We don't have the luxury of that recognised stock exchange. The answer is this, that on price, we use the recognised share valuation methodologies, yes, which are recognised by HMRC to set a surrogate price. That's how we value the company. Okay? And we establish minority interest prices for minority interest shareholders, which are linked to discounts on whole company value. For the market, well, what is the substitute for the market? We don't have a recognised stock exchange. The substitute for the recognised stock exchange is the employee share trust. which I've sort of illustrate for you in this presentation. Again, I allude back because the contribution was so significant to the development of our subject, the work of Louis Kelso, and that work continues, as Malcolm indicated, to his good lady wife, the person both Malcolm and I have lectured with over the years, through the Kelso Institute. If any of you want to research that, I encourage you, go to the website on the Kelso Institute. Okay, interesting features of case study number 3. Employee share trust operates as the surrogate market for the shares. Yes? It's in place of the recognised stock exchange simply because there is no quotation on the recognised stock exchange. We recognise the share valuation methodologies used as a surrogate value for the shares, and the commitment with this company was to actually value the company every 6 months. It then became every year, as they saw that a 12-monthly valuation was probably the requirement rather than on a 6-monthly basis. And the same 20% of the share capital is recycled again and again and again. Yes? Okay? So can you see how that provides some solution to the conundrum which Stephen addressed earlier on in his presentation? 5%, well, you can only do that 20 times, as either Malcolm or Stephen said, and that assumes you're not going to have any for yourself. So the question is to think in terms of the value that can be generated. Okay? If an individual executive joins the company and says, I must have 5%, he or she needs some counselling. Yes? You need to talk with them and explain to them that it's a value objective that you're looking for. Yes? Okay, let's move on then to case study number 4, succession and shareholder investment diversification. Note, employee shares used for management buyouts. So the succession might be a management buyout opportunity. I'm going to illustrate through this case study as an example of how employee share schemes contribute to a management buyout. If any of you are considering management buyouts, we've developed a whole range of ways of using employee share schemes to facilitate management buyouts over the years. Employee share schemes is the most tax efficient way and the most commercially effective way to orchestrate a management buyout. Yeah? Okay? And if you've done your management buyout and you've not used employee share schemes, well, okay, that's history. But let's now introduce employee share schemes in order to motivate the employees further to develop the business. This is a company that has developed steadily over many years. Existing shareholders in their late 50s. Not old, but they were still contemplating retirement. Engineering business with a long history, but with strong potential still for new product development and capture of new markets. The existing shareholders directors, they'd identified successors who as responsible individuals would be able to lead the management of the business, management of some 220 individuals into this new era for the company. Important, of course, that when you're identifying succession in shareholding, that you also identify succession in management. Yeah? You don't want to give your succession in shareholding to individuals who can't manage the business. Okay? The preparation must be in tandem. Succession of the shareholding and succession of the management. These individuals were primarily concerned with the fact that they had actually got the whole of their wealth contained within this one vehicle of the company that they developed over many years. They wanted to diversify their investment. That made them feel safer. Not that they didn't have confidence in their company, but as they were looking towards retirement, that was their objective. The solution, we established an employee share trust. Initially, 24% of the shares were sold to the employee share trust. Options were granted of an EMI nature to key management employees with some top-up through tax and approved share options. Okay? If you're going for maximum on EMI, you can't do the second next best CSOP because the CSOP limit is contained within the EMI 250,000. But you can do top-up on approved share options. So the idea being that on a graduated basis, the successor individuals have moved from 24% holding to 40% holding to 75% holding. And in the meantime, steps were taken to provide whatever management training was needed to the institute directors to bring these individuals to a point where they could run the company. Key features, okay, let's just identify a few, many features which came out of this case study, but I just want to identify a few for you. We obtained the clearance for the sale of the shares to the trust to be treated as a capital gains type transaction as recognised by HMRC with the sale to the trust at CGT rates. There are various hurdles which we have to overcome in circumstances like that, most notably the legislation which is referred to as transactions in securities, but it is a transaction for which we can obtain a particular clearance. The existing shareholder directors in the short term, while they're moving through this graduated transition, they're selling only 24% of the shares. What does that mean? They've still got control of the company. They've still got control not just of ordinary resolutions, but of special resolutions. Yes, the 75% position is maintained. Also, the statutory corporation tax was available to this company. This is a statutory corporation tax deduction, which is available not just through EMI, but through any form of employee share scheme, on the basis of the increase in value from option price to market value at date of exercise. So you calculate that value, and whatever that value is determined as, you actually use it as a plug-in to your corporation tax deduction to reduce the profits available to corporation tax. Yes? Okay? So this is designed to introduce some element of symmetry, which historically has been so prevalent within the US qualifying plan, from which much of the inspiration for our schemes come. Yes? That the employees benefit and the company benefits from the employee share ownership initiative. Okay? And then, of course, we have the opportunity for the individuals to take title to the shares through the recycling process, which I already alerted you to through previous case studies, and ultimately they will move into the shoes of shareholders when they sell. And so we have this in perpetuity arrangement of individuals take shares, ultimately they sell them when they retire, sell them back to the trust, and so it goes on generation after generation, a la Peninsula Newspapers, schemes created by Louis Calso back in 1956. Last case study I want to share with you.
You're going to manage it in the time.
Absolutely. Then I ought. Okay, the growth shares model. So the growth shares model is an arrangement which has already been alluded to by Stephen and Liz. Let me just provide this example. Private company currently worth £10 million. Okay? Company is resolved to growing this business. Again, serious focus in this business to growth. It's in a specialised management consultancy field, dynamic set of products and services, unlimited potential within the UK and overseas. The existing shareholders, listen to this because this is very attractive to many owner managers, they want to actually preserve the existing whole company value for themselves going forward, the £10 million. But they want to involve the whole workforce of 140 in a growth shares model which provides a very, very powerful incentive for those individuals to grow the company. So what's the solution? We reclassify, there's only one class of ordinary shares in this company, so we reclassify the ordinary share capital into new share capital of preference shares on the one hand and growth ordinary shares on the other. Yes? We then freeze that 10 million value into the preference share capital. But all future growth attracts to the ordinary shares. The existing owner managers are the only people who have the 10 million preference shares, and that's a preference for them on sale of the company. Yeah? The growth shares, we have 70% for the owner managers and 30% for the employees. Actually, 80-20 in this particular example. So you can see that the owner managers have that first call upon any sale of the company at the 10 million. Yeah? But then the rest of the value, so let's say the company sells for 40 million sometime hence, the additional 30 million, 80% is shared is allocated through the share to the owner managers, original owner managers, with 20% applies to the employees. In this particular case, it was a 50 million sale I've used here as an example. So particular features. Initially, the growth shares, the new ordinary share capital, are valued as a very, very low market value. Okay? Makes it very, very attractive to the employees because all of the gain can fall into the capital gains tax regime. Right? And provided the time period from the date of grant to the date of sale is at least 1 year, entrepreneurs relief applies. Okay? The 5% position, which normally applies on your standard entrepreneurs relief, doesn't have to apply. Okay? And ownership of the shares is not required for the 1 year, as is required in the original entrepreneurs relief. So for the special entrepreneurs relief that attaches to EMI, yes, it can be any percentage ownership, and indeed, they don't actually need to own the shares until 1 second before they sell, if that indeed is the structure of the scheme arrangement. So a very, very powerful scheme indeed. We can use growth shares completely separate from EMI if EMI doesn't apply, but we can also use growth shares as an adjunct to EMI to make it even more tax efficient. So thank you very much, Malcolm, for the opportunity to share. If you wish to take advantage of my book, I'm here for the whole day. If you want to talk with me about any work, my two assistants, Sati and Louise, do speak to them as well. You might prefer to speak to them and speak to me, I don't know. But anyway, absolutely, yes, absolutely. Somehow we are available to you throughout the course of today and indeed henceforth through email or telephone. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And of course, David will taking part in the beginners panel, which takes place after the next. I should perhaps have mentioned at the beginning. I'm sure I spoke in great detail about all the health and safety requirements, which somehow fell off the back of my note. For those of you who would prefer to, it is possible to download these slides and look at them on your own phone, tablet, or whatever in front of you. The URL is on the agenda page here. This is a convenient way of following it later. So that's in front of you. Thank you, David. David Patton wearing the promised kimono at the moment. But whether or not he's